Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream here. So, we're going to talk a little bit about chord shapes and chord types, and just trying to think about how I might talk about, or what kind of title I might create for this talk. And so I came up with chord types and extensions because you could think about a few different types of chords and then come up with different ways of let's say coloring those in and working with those. So I think that's a fairly decent way maybe to think about these. So I'm going to start out today with a tune I haven't actually played in a while. I've been looking for kind of a blues tune that I thought might be instructional. So it's gonna be Blues for Alice. So I thought I'd start out today by playing a little bit on that progression and do a little improvisation on it to start us out here. All right. So we'll start out with that, and then we'll get into some things. I'll have some chord diagrams and things kind of ready to go too. So hopefully this is all dialed up nicely enough. Let's take it at a sort of medium tempo here. All right, so I moved a little bit more into the chords there. I realized I had meant to demonstrate a little bit of some more chords and things like that as we talk about things today. And hopefully you heard different instances where I might have played a minor on one chorus. I might have played a or 7-flat-5 on one chorus for a certain segment, or or maybe dominant versus sort of major. And the turnaround too, maybe playing around with different versions or different types of chords that may fall into different families in order to just give some variety and change things up. And that's kind of part of the fun of and the challenge of playing tunes and kind of interacting with a rhythm section and everything. Okay, so let's talk about some changes and or chord types and things, and maybe I'll keep this applicable to this chord progression. So there's different types of blues progression. So some are very dominant 7, some are minor, and some are major. So this type of tune has sort of a major quality to the first or to it. So we have this kind of major chord, and then F, and then we go to let's say E minor. Okay, and then it kind of goes to say more of a dominant 7th. And notice that if you play E minor, we end up with a B. That actually is in the melody, so right at that moment. And then we have the A7. So we do form a 2-5, but that dominant 7th, get that B flat again. You can kind of hear that in the melody. Okay, so we get the major and then the flat 9. Okay, so that's kind of part of the goal here to think about this. We have a few different types of chords. We have major type chords. So we talked about this 6. This would be a 6-9 chord. We could have a major 7. Okay. We have the dominant 7th type chord. So those chords tend to move or resolve, let's say, to another chord like D minor, for example. So A7 and to D minor. So what a very common extension for the A7, especially going to minor, is the flat 9. It resolves nicely to minor. Can also be used in major. All right, and then so we have tonic minor type chords, that we also have predominant minor type chords. So and sometimes there's some overlap there. So we have the key of F for this tune, Blues for Alice. So that means we have key 1 flat, we have the relative major, and we have the relative minor, which is D minor. Okay, so we can view that D minor as maybe a 6 chord, but we can also view it as a 2-5 or a 2-5 progression, which kind of cascades down. Okay, and then get to the B flat 6, so that's going to be the 4 chord, and that falls into this family or type of chord. So we've got another major type chord. It's a 4 chord, so it's kind of in that same family as the F chord. So it's a major type chord that's not a dominant. Okay, and then minor to dominant. So that's often 2-5 progression. We get this cascading 2-5 progression, and then back to the 1 chord. So that's quite a few of the just general chord types you're going to find in pretty much all tunes, which are the major, dominant, minor, minor 7 flat 5, and the diminished. In this particular tune, there's not really a diminished chord, but you can come up with them. So you could say, okay, I'm going to play E minor 7 flat 5, and say the bass player is playing A. You can play this E diminished 7 chord. And the reason for that is that we have the second inversion here of A7. We take the root, place it with a flat 9, right? So we get that. And then there are some other concepts like plurality, where you start seeing that maybe this certain shape can kind of stand in for another chord, or it sort of has enough commonalities that you can say, okay, well, this is sort of something that works in that context. All right, so let's do a little more playing. I'm gonna dial up Days of Wine and Roses. So just to go over our featured tune list for this this month, it looks like it's going to be Days of Wine and Roses, which is pretty familiar tune, hopefully to most, but actually it doesn't matter. But you want it to be a pretty familiar tune. And Atras de Porta. So we want that one. That one's totally new to me. I'm like, I just found out who the actual composer of the music was today. So I'm just kind of in the midst of learning that with all of you guys as well. So so that's another tune that we'll be talking about a little bit today. I think next I'm going to do Days of Wine and Roses. And we'll do some just kind of general ideas of types of chords and then extension choices that you're going to use. So an extension is just something that really sits above the basic chord, which is usually the root, third, fifth, sixth, or seventh. So 6 or 7. Okay. So I'll mention to those podcast listeners too that this is a video available to members on the YouTube channel. All right, so let's do a little playing on Days of Wine and Roses, and I'll also see about incorporating or thinking a little bit more about chord shapes. It's kind of easy temptation to kind of go off on some strictly melodic adventures, but kind of incorporate some chords that tie in to what we're looking at today. All right, so let's find a tempo and make sure. So the other day, I probably should edit that out of the live stream, but a little mishap with where things started and all with the Atras de Porta, or Porta. Probably pronouncing that all wrong. But all right, so we'll do a little Days of Wine and Roses. Let's see, let's take it kind of maybe a little slower here. And do a little playing on it here. Okay, so let's talk about this sort of on these terms here, and I welcome anyone's questions too. And so hopefully this little MIDI neck that I'm using will help to demonstrate some of these chords, and I'll try to recall back a little bit to some of the shapes that I was using. So remember, we're trying to think in terms of families of chords, and then choices of extensions and things. So we have again key of F here. Okay, so here's an F major 9. Okay, so there's a choice where, okay, the 9 doesn't go very high above the chord itself. So if you take a scale, let's say F major, and you play it, and you just go kind of one above the octave. So, okay. Now let's try, so that's that note that we played. So let's play every other note now. So going in third, so root 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, so we get the major 9. And then we're omitting the 5th of the chord. So if we were to take this chord here, so here we would have root 3rd, 5, major 7, and it'd be very difficult to play that and that, but you can do it with tapping 2 fingers. Play it down here. But that's another kind of interesting topic too, is that if the bass player is already playing F, it's not really so necessary to play it yourself. So you could take this, you might say, okay, what is the context? This is kind of an A minor 7 chord. But if you put F under it, then in that context, it's more of a F major 9. Now, when it comes to playing, you can certainly play some of these. They're a little bit harder to grasp. So some of these are easier patterns, sometimes called grips, can be nice to just kind of play and hold on to. So we have these certain extensions that you might expect on this one chord and this family of chords. So the 9 is a pretty neutral sound. Okay, now we have this chord. This is a dominant type chord, and I oftentimes think of this as kind of a static dominant, if you will. It's not really, you might look it up. I don't know if it's really a technical term, but basically a dominant that doesn't have a ton of dissonance, that you can kind of sit on it. And oftentimes these certain chords like the flat 7 or the 2 chord, or maybe the 4 chord, oftentimes you get this chord, this sort of quality where the chord is dominant, but maybe it has this sharp 11 sort of sound that just sort of feels appropriate. It's just that kind of sort of feels like the right sound. So again, what we're talking about here is a type of chord, dominant 7. Okay, we're thinking about how we're kind of coloring it in, how we're fitting it in. So we have a kind of a natural 9 and a sharp 11, or even 13. Now you might ask yourself, well, how do I decide which extensions to use? I'll say part of that is just the experience of listening to a lot of recordings, and just kind of listening and actually really just playing wrong stuff. So like playing things that doesn't sound right, and then you say, okay, well, that doesn't sound like it would be a flat 9 there. It would sound like maybe a natural 9 would be more appropriate. So kind of going through that whole trial and error sort of thing. Now, another thing is, which I think I talked about the other day, is to think about um, trying to keep it in key as much as possible. So we know E flat's out of key, out of at least the diatonic key, but these other notes that I'm talking about are pretty inside the key of F. We have A, that extension, we have F, and C. Yeah, it's actually the F major triad. Right, so again, that's a sort of a rule of thumb that you can try to work with. So, so taking a chord and just seeing if you can kind of keep it in the key area as you do it. So that's a spot I think where we talked about sort of melodic minor kind of thing. So let's think about some other good examples. So that's a dominant type chord, and we talked about major chords. Minor, well, we have this 2 chord, the G minor. This is actually pretty important in this tune. We have it has several moments. It functions as a 2/5 quite a bit. So we have the 2/5. We have the G minor, kind of walking down, connecting to the E minor 7 flat 5. So that's a kind of an important moment there. Okay, and that gives us another chord that we're trying to think about, the types of chords and how to color those in. So on 2 chord, the 9 is great. The 11 works. It's fairly neutral. The 13 or a 6, you need to be probably a little bit careful about that, just as a general thought when it comes to minor chords in general. But the E minor 7 flat 5, so that's the 7 chord. It's functioning as a 2 chord, which is often the case. So E minor 7 flat 5 to A7. Now E minor 7 flat 5, you might think, well, it has a little bit more required of it just to make the sound of that chord. So like on so what I mean by that is, for example, on the F major 7, I omitted the 5, right? Or on the G minor, I omitted the 5. Right? On this chord, I omitted the 5 of this E flat 7. So the 5th is often a kind of a good note to maybe remove, just to, especially on guitar, just to give us space to play other notes. But in general, pianists do this as well. But the minor 7 flat 5, just the name of that chord tells you, well, you need this minor, the quality. Okay, we have the flat 7, and then we have the flat 5. So we already have 4 notes in that. But it's fairly common to have a 11 in there as well. Okay, and then the 9. You know, if you're playing melody, I'd probably use it as a passing tone, maybe. But again, trying to think, okay, what's the key area here? Now the 6, that's an interesting one, because you can really kind of do either one, kind of depending on what you're trying to go for. Okay, so you might start pulling from D harmonic minor, and then you're thinking of that in terms of this chord. But as far as the chord itself, it has a lot required of it, so might kind of stick with the basic part of the chord. So again, not a lot of diminished, it's fully diminished chords. So that's what one type that we're also talking about. But we can apply that to dominant seventh, flat nine type chords. So again, like in the previous example, and I think I did this actually at some point. Let's say you play E minor 7, third inversion here, and then just kind of drop this down. Then you have this C sharp diminished, which stands in well for A7 with a flat 9, which we also talked about in the last example. All right, so let's do a little more playing here. So we'll work on Atroz de Porta, which hopefully I'm pronouncing somewhere near to what it needs to sound like. And I'm gonna really make sure here to get kind of the right segment on it. All right. And maybe we'll pull this one up too a little bit if we have time. And I wrote out some variations to it as well. So maybe I'll do a little repeat through here. Make sure I turn on the loop. And then let's start it right from the beginning here. And I'm gonna probably keep my eye on the page here pretty faithfully because I said I haven't really internalized this tune. All right, and it's pretty long with all the with the intro and different segments to it, but really nice tune. So we're gonna play a little slower and kind of nice and slow here, and kind of work through it. And this is another thing which I meant to talk about today, which thankfully I'm remembering now. It's if you play on a slower tune, then it kind of gives you some opportunity to really stretch out and explore some voicings and try some different extensions. And I would encourage you to try some things out just in general in your practice session, and just have your ear sort of tell you, oh, well, I don't know about the sound of that, or I like the sound of that all that, to kind of just make those leaps. So that way when you're performing somewhere, you kind of know. It just depends on where you're playing and all that. Is if you're playing in a maybe concert setting where you have a bunch of musicians in the audience and feeling like you could really stretch out and just get kind of edgy with things, then you kind of know some of those sounds. But if you're playing maybe in a quiet sort of background dinner environment or something, or a club, then it might say, well, you might play a little more conservatively, you might say. So, all right, well, let's play here with this tune. I might play around with the tempo a little bit as we go. We'll see what happens. Okay, so talking a little bit about this tune here. Um, and let's see. Well, maybe we'll see what I can do if I sure I have it on this computer yet. See what I can do here. See if I can bring in the other version. So I wrote out a little more on this one. See if I can pull that up for us. But as I'm doing that, let's think about kind of what happening there. So I was playing, so I'm playing some arpeggios. I was really thinking about these chords so that we can talk about these emotions. So quite a few times I had the minor 7 flat 5 moving to this diminished sort of sound, which is just part of a really natural way that the those two kind of work together and flow with one another. So, all right, well, it looks like my computers didn't want to connect today. So probably have to save that part, but I'll just go over some changes there and some chords, and maybe just talk a little bit similarly to what we did just then. So all right, so we have A minor. Now, when the chords change, you can really stay on the same kind of thing, or when the bass note moves, you can really kind of stay on the same thing. But what happens is if the bass note changes, like so A minor 7, and then they go over to the G, it's nice to have that reordering of the notes. So you can do that or not do that, and you might do it to taste, so you might decide that, depending on what you're doing. So let's say you might go just to have some motion, or right, or this to this. So you can choose these different versions and make a little bit of motion, or you can go in the opposite direction too. So you say, so let's say the A, right, and then that note goes, bass note goes down, and you're kind of heading up. So those are just some things that you can try to do. So F sharp minor 7 flat 5, again, a lot of required of it already. You can put it, sometimes it's nice to put it over the let's say a C chord, and then you get the B7. Now a couple things I was doing this voicing for the B, fairly certain I did that. Right, so you get the flat 9 on bottom, which is a little bit, I don't say risky, but it's a little bit edgy. So it's a kind of lower down, but it's kind of a nice sound. Okay, but of course you could play this chord here with a flat 9, or maybe go play a sharp 9 on it. Okay. I think at some point I played more of an E minor 6 sort of sound on the E minor, and then maybe back up to the D there. The C7, so that's a dominant 7th chord, of course. A lot of interesting kind of things you can do with that. You might even call it little tricks or things, but you can take this chord shape, and this moves around pretty well for different things. So you can say, okay, this one for C7 sharp 9, or say, okay, play it down there. So it becomes a first inversion, but it's the same shape. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting feature of that chord. So I'll see if you have root position. So you have the sharp 11 there. You can also do that same shape here, right, with the sharp 11 and then on from there, and then this root and on from there. So it's kind of the same shape. Other shapes that are really nice, and this is a really nice sound I find. This chord voiced this way. Another one that you can move pretty nicely around. So this right now on the root, it works really nicely on the third as well, which actually we talked about in the other tune. So those are some areas, and then just thinking too about some of the way the motions work. So you have like, here I'm in the key 1 sharp. So there's a moment where we have this. So F sharp, or sorry, C sharp minor 7 flat 5, going to the F sharp 7 flat 9, and then to the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, to the B7. I've oftentimes really enjoyed that type of progression, where you end up, and this is also in the Days of Wine and Roses, where you might have a D minor to G7, then the chord quality changes, and you have another 2/5. I remember first, I don't know if I remember the exact moment, but I almost remember pretty clearly just really taking to that sort of sound. So it's sort of circle of fifths, but it gives you a little moment in each of those 2/5s. So that's pretty kind of cool. All right, now we have this E6. Okay, and so you can put that over B. All right. So it's a major type chord, right? Okay, and the B as well. Okay. All right, so those are particular moments, and there's definitely a lot to be gained from this tune, and really, excuse me, some of those moments of playing on either the major or the minor. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to do a little more playing, and then we'll head off here. And so I think I'm going to do a little bit on the same tune. I'm going to do a little faster here, and I'm bringing in some chords to just do some more kind of melodic playing here. everybody. Well, thanks so much for checking this out. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you all in the next one. Let me know if you have any questions, topics. That's always helpful to hear how everybody's doing. And so I will see you all in the next one. Have a great practice session.